The meeting will come to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up is the adoption of the agenda. Any corrections?
I will adopt the agenda as presented.
Second,
The motion has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Up next in the agenda is public comment. I will read a statement concerning public comment and then we will invite guests to speak. A person speaking during the public comment portion of the meeting should state their name, whether they are a resident of the district, and if speaking for an organization, the name of the organization. Statements should be brief and concise. The board will not hear comments regarding any individual district staff member. A person giving public comment is limited to an established time limit of 3 minutes. We will begin with Natalia Philipstov.
Good evening. My name is Natalia Fiactisa. I am representing Woodburn Russian Program Parent Committee, and I do live in Woodburn. So several weeks ago, teachers and members of the Russian community made a request of the district to keep the position of Russian coordinator, and the board's inaction has resulted in us, parents, have no one to turn to with regards to the Russian program and questions that we may have. I've had parents approach me with a lot of questions, a lot of confusion about who they should be contacting to find out more information about the Russian preschool and the Russian program in general. I myself had to contact the district to figure out who to send them to. So it's a mess. We need a Russian program coordinator because she's the one that was our point of contact. She was our liaison. So without her, we've been really struggling. And it's vital that we have an answer of whether we have a coordinator or not, because there's going to be a lot more questions, especially as the new school year begins. These questions cannot be answered by other administrators or employees who are unfamiliar with the Russian program and who do not speak Russian, which is what's happening right now. It needs to be a person who can speak Russian fluently and make calls to our parents who only speak Russian. We have zero representation at the district level. We have zero representation at the administrative level. And nothing has been done to change that. Woodburn says that their vision statement is to have a multilingual district. That is not true. You have done nothing to make it multilingual. Bilingual, yes, not multilingual. The program may be seeing lower registration numbers, but we ask that instead of abandoning the cause, you help provide the support the program, parents, and teachers need. Not only that, but the numbers are up. Kindergarten has 24 students. Preschool is completely full, and there's a wait list with enough students to open another class. This says that we have had to rebuild, but we are rebuilding with a new demographic. And a lot of that is because we had a Russian coordinator who could go out into the community, make these connections, and tell people about it, make those phone calls. So we ask that you do the same for our program that you would do for students who are struggling. You don't just pull the plug on them. You provide them with assistance. You give them the resources. That's what we need. By not doing so, you're going to kill our program. So please answer us quickly and preferably saying that we do have a Russian program coordinator. All we're asking is for a 0.5 position, not even a full-time position. Thank you.
Up next, Tony Solomon.
So I just sent
he just decided to do Zoom, so I just added him and he got the invite, so we can go to the next and then he can go.
We will circle back to Tony. Next is Jimmy Puente.
Good morning or good evening. We are at this juncture because of choices people have made. The question that many in the community want answered is, will Mr. Medina hold himself accountable? On April 14, 2021, the Woodburn Independent published a direct quote from an opinion piece Mr. Medina wrote regarding the superintendent of this district, who was later terminated because of their personal choices. The quote is as follows: however, no amount of positive change in that time excuses a leader from being responsible for the impact of his or her personal conduct. Recently, my family and I have felt the personal impact of Mr. Medina's personal conduct. On 8/13/22, Mr. Medina took action that violated school board member standards of conduct policy when he blurred the lines between community issues and family. Mr. Medina's actions were again taken without considering the impact he had with those he contacted. Rather, Mr. Medina questioned the right of this community member to express himself by stating the conduct displayed should not have occurred because I was raised as a Christian and Christians should not act this way. I thought calling out community leaders on their personal decisions based on their own statements was a community responsibility, not a religious issue. Mr. Medina also alleged that the group of the community members that attended the meeting on August 9th were in fact trying to start a riot, allegedly were keeping him from leaving the parking lot, were high-fiving each other and laughing at him on his way out of the parking lot. To address those allegations, if need be, video will show that what Mr. Medina alleges is false. Given what's at stake, it's understandable why these statements are being denied. Despite all the yuck and muck this issue has caused, this remains clear. This is not a family issue. This is not a religious issue. This is a community issue. And as a community member, I have learned that we do not stop the movement while there is friction, but we must keep on loving the people while we are moving. Family has been, is, and always will be on the utmost importance. However, in this unique situation, as a concerned community member, not family, regarding community issues, I must do and will do what I believe is right for the community in which my children, nieces, nephews, and many others can be and will be impacted by the decisions of the community leaders' personal conduct. I have a voice and I will use it. Inconsistencies and evidence pertaining to this issue, as well as emotional injury, mental anguish, trauma, inability to form relationships, nightmares, and other negative effects should raise concerns having someone in leadership with this number of things going on, making decisions for our community's children. If the above listed were disclosed on an individual to obtain a position in local school, there is no question the person would not be considered for such a position, much less a school board position. With that, I respectfully request the resignation of the committee.
Yes. Hi, Tony, you're next.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Members of the school board, Superintendent Morlock, esteemed colleagues, and members of the Woodburn community. As we begin a new school year, we as educators are excited to meet our new students and begin the year on the right path to approach whatever the new definition of normalcy will be. We know that over the past couple of years, the COVID pandemic has been a source of trauma for many families. We understand and appreciate ODE's recommended focus echoed in WSD's public statements that we must place an emphasis on care and connection in how we interact with our students and approach our lessons. It was in this context that I was shocked to discover that the MAPS growth assessments in math and reading will be administered to all students in grades K through 5 between September 19th and September 30th of this year. The MAPS test, mind you, is not a state requirement. It is simply, as far as anyone can tell, a method of acquiring additional data. Now, there's nothing at all wrong with data per se, but when teachers have little idea and no training in how to use this data, when nobody at any level of administration has been able to demonstrate how the collection of this data can or has actually helped our students, the rationale for interrupting regular instruction so that our students can be subjected to hours at a time behind computer screens seems at best unclear and at worst non-existent. Where is the equity filter? How is the data gleaned from these tests being shared with parents and the community, let alone teachers? Apparently, WSD has contracted out for an unknown amount of money the administration of the MAPS assessment to an organization called NWEA, an entity with little connection to our unique community or its cultures. When students arrive in new classrooms with new teachers and classmates, and when students begin to feel secure and valued within a nurturing environment, the administration of these superfluous assessments will be a rude awakening and will fly directly in the face of the obligatory lip service that's been given to the phrase care and connection. Students who have already been traumatized simply do not need to be re-traumatized so early in the school year by the high pressure environment of unnecessary standardized tests. Even without the MAPS test, our students are already required to undergo a myriad of formative and summative assessments throughout the school year. At what point will we realize that this institutional obsession with data for data's sake has clearly become excessive? How can we show care and connection? By focusing as students as human beings instead of as data points. There's nothing wrong with assessment, but when it's done in excess, it makes school, even for our youngest kids, not a fun place to be. If we truly want school to be joyous again, if we truly want to improve our attendance rates, let's prioritize the needs of kids over an institutional need for numbers. A good place to start is by getting rid of these MAPS tests. Thank you very much.
And next up, Courtney Elwell.
So my name is Courtney Elwell, and I am a resident of Woodburn, and I do have children here and have had children here in the school system, go through the school system. Superintendent Morlock, chairman of the board, and members of the board. I am here to address an important matter that requires immediate consideration from the board of directors. I want to address again the behavior before and after the choices of Anthony Medina made to solicit services at the Woodburn Spa. From the first moment that Mr. Medina made the choice to solicit services at the Woodburn Spa, he has not remedied his choices. Upon review of the police report, it is clear that Mr. Medina had numerous opportunities to leave the situation that he himself declared was not normal. He had not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, not seven, but more opportunities to leave the choice that he had made. This is not the kind of decision maker that we can have representing our students. After the situation, numerous times in the press, there were errors, misinformation, and lies. Mr. Medina did nothing to correct these lies. My message is simple. Here, we as a community are embarrassed. We are done. Mr. Medina resigned. And board, if he refuses, we are asking you to vote Mr. Medina out. It is time. Thank you.
Next up, Emily Trevelyan.
Thank you for having me. I've come before the school board this evening to respectfully request the resignation of Anthony Medina because of his appointment at Woodburn Spa. I watched the 45-minute video of his police interview, and he repeatedly said that the experience was weird, not normal, and not like other massages he's had. However, he remained in the massage room and continued receiving the service despite knowing that it wasn't typical. Medina did not end the appointment once it became outside the norms of professional massage therapy. He was in full control of himself, his body, and his decision-making. Medina made a poor choice to stay in a situation that was inappropriate for him to be in. Since he did not stand up for himself with sound reasoning, then I do not trust him to act in the good of the children of Woodburn, their families, the teachers, and staff of the district. Regardless of the good he has done to further the mission of Woodburn School District, he has brought scrutiny upon the district and compromised his own integrity.
Debbie Patton?
What was the name? We didn't hear it.
Debbie Patton? Yeah, that was public comments. We'll go on to reports. We begin with board reports.
I can start. Oh, you want to start, Noemi?
Oh, go ahead, Laura.
Okay. This weekend, Friday and Saturday, I was sharing some time with the school district, 4 school districts and migrant education program. I don't know if you can hear me. I hear feedback. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I hear feedback and it's like, oh, you know, maybe they're not listening. They're not able to hear me. And so I was with four school districts, migrant education program, the parents action committee, and you know, about training in community capacity building. So I was able to share, you know, some of the ideas of what to do in community as community building for the PAC. So that's what I did. Thank you.
I can go next. In these last couple of weeks, I mostly took some time off. I went to go visit my mom in California. And on my way back, I made it in time for the fiesta, the Woodburn Fiesta Mexicana, Mexicana Fiesta. I participated as part of my business, but also was there to watch my daughter participate in Miss Boyd dance group. And then I also noticed that Woodburn School District participated as well. And I think this may have been the first year. So thank you for doing that and participating, and also our mariachi band performed well, as well as our cheer team at the fiesta.
I attended the Fiesta Mexicana as well. It's great to see community members and folks there. Also attended the legislative policy committee with the OSBA. Things coming down the pipeline for the next session.
I spent a couple of weeks in Mexico, with my family. It's great to get away and just visit some family down there. But I did make it back in time to witness the district and get involved with the Fiesta Mexicana parade, which was nice. Growing up here, we always saw the parade, and it was really cool to see that and the mariachi band. And I was just a spectator, and it was just like bringing back memories as a child. So that was good to see. But I'm back now, and I'm excited for this new year, hoping that we can get things going, build some positive momentum, and ultimately serve our students well. Just do a great job for them because they deserve it. Next up is the Office of the Superintendent will report on health and safety.
That's right. I'd like to invite Casey Woolley, Director of Safety and Operations, to the table. You can share a little bit about it as we're getting geared up for school. I know that safety is one of the things that's always on every parent's mind. So I'll start off with that report to begin with. So, Casey.
Well, thank you, Superintendent Morlock, Board Chair, Board members. Thought we would provide kind of an overview of briefly some of the security upgrades that we've had because of the bond work, and then kind of what the focus going into this year is going to be for their building in our community. So I do want to say thank you to the board and thank you to community members. Because of the passing of the bond, it did allow for some much needed upgrades around safety and security. If you recall, it allowed us to upgrade cameras, badging systems, and it also allowed us to have digital door locks, allowed us to add secure vestibules at our sites, with the exception of the high school. And as we transition this year into one comprehensive high school, we are already beginning a planning stage for that secure vestibule in the front. And that's just when we started that work in the bond and we talked with community members, that was something that was very important to have that safety out visible and present. So thank you for that. And just because I'm saying we're focusing on something else does not mean we will not be continuing to work towards those, to grow those things. But we kind of wanted to bring kind of a focus on the two things that we can as a school district control. And this is in direct partnership with first responders. And that's both Woodburn Police Department, Woodburn Fire, and also Marion County SWAT. And the two things that we can control are communication and response time. And during an emergency crisis, those two things have a huge outcome on the level of potential damages that can happen during a safety. And so really working in collaboration with them to figure out how can we increase communication, how can we increase response time, starting with kind of a streamlining and gathering of our reporting mechanism and our communication tools. So as you know, as members in our community, you've probably received snail mail, maybe a class dojo if you have an elementary kid, maybe a remind or a robocall or a flash alert or social media. So we have a lot of ways that we communicate. And so this year we want to focus on what are the most effective ways to get a hold of our stakeholders and in what capacity best we can serve them and thinking an emergency as quickly as possible. So also asking our first responders to look at that on the back end of it, like how does it talk to Metcom, how does it talk to 911, how can we expedite those things so that response time goes down slower. So looking at redesigning our webpage, putting together the social media tools. We also added a new systemic radio system for redundancy and communication. For instance, if you remember the high school fire, anybody who had a kid up there was trying to call on a cell phone traffic was pretty much took the network down. So we've put a systemic radio system across all of our schools so that you can talk amongst the schools and with 100% capacity at each site. And they've all been licensed, all are secured, and have all been installed with each site also having a base radio station that allows them to monitor. Also with communication with Woodburn Fire and Woodburn Police to make sure they have access to those channels and access to a radio in case of emergency to again, increase communication. The goal is that when a first responder rolls out to a school, they don't have to ask, how do I talk to somebody? They already have those tools in place. So that also works with communication on first responders. Starting 2 weeks ago, we've seen an increased site visits. Our SRO officer, Ponce, worked with me and we were able to get Marion County SWAT. They walked a couple of our sites already. We just want to offer site familiarity and they allow feedback. They provide feedback to us on how we can do things, how we respond during the crisis. So they're part of that process of refining those crisis response plans. We also want to work in collaboration with them around reporting software. So we're currently looking at some reporting software that allow both teachers within the classroom and community members better access to reporting safety concerns. And rather than having to call several people or do something, it's simply by the press of a button and it can autofill who at the WPD gets it, who at WFD gets it on the back end if it talks to Metcom or our 911 services. So we're in the preliminary stages with those providers and our first responders to see which one of those kind of mechanisms would best provide them the information. The goal with that also is that these apps have the potential to offer geofencing, which means if you push a button in emergency happening at one place, on the back end of it, first responders can see where that is on a digital map. That digital map will have things like AEDs, and we get back to response time and other life-saving measures. So as they enter the building, they know specifically where the emergencies are going on and access to potential life-saving equipment when it's there. We do have, as I said, our SRO programs back. We will be starting with one. WPD is in hiring process to try to get more people, and we're hopeful that by the start of the new year, we'll have a second SRO on site as well. And that kind of gets us to the response time. Communication can cut that response time. If they have access to accurate communication, if it's instantaneous and doesn't take multiple layers to get to them, they can respond quickly. The other thing we know is if people who do respond, and even people on site, if they have access to life-saving materials, not a first aid kit, life-saving trauma kits, that you can also seriously increase the likelihood of people surviving serious trauma. So we have trauma kits for all our sites. We're also looking at tourniquet and field dressing kits to be periodically placed throughout our buildings. That's so if a first responder happens to be on site, or if they are on site and they need more rather than have to leave a building or do something, they'll be able to have access to that stuff.
Do our teachers and staff know how to use them?
No, there'll be, well, on first aid, there is some basic training on tourniquets, but we would want to provide specific trainings for these, because this isn't just a first aid kit. So
Right,
this would be ongoing training. we
Right,
have
but
to
I'm
provide.
saying if there is an emergency and there isn't a first responder, who knows how to use?
Yeah, and so there would need to be specific training on this.
So there is none.
Not yet, we will know, because this is the first year we're putting them in place. So, good question. Again, so response time and communication is going to be our area of focus this year. Through those mechanisms, trying to increase the communication, getting some new technology that would allow increased access, and then increasing access and training, as you said, to life-saving equipment such as that. Of course, we will always have to mitigate communicable diseases. So we will continue with mitigating communicable diseases. This time it's COVID-19. And we will continue with what I put in your packet with some of the communicable disease planning, which is we will have signage outside our entrances that will show identifying symptoms, mitigating practices for lessening loss of word.
Transmission.
Yes, transmission, thank you. And most importantly, just staying home if you have a fever, if you're ill. We'll also have sanitation stations with PPE at each entrances, masks if they would like. There'll be more PPE available in the office for people who would like. We'll continue to clean high touch point areas. We're working with First Student and providing sanitizers and continue to sanitize all buses before and after routes. And we'll Willamette Valley Toxicology is who OHA is working with for home testing. They emailed yesterday and had an updated sign up. This year, rather than having the tests delivered to schools, they actually want to deliver them to homes. So it should be an easier use for them. So we will have access to at-home testing for family and staff who would like to participate. And then we will have our ongoing partnership with our local healthcare providers to continue to provide access to vaccine clinics and testing as they happen throughout the year. And then again, just really telling people if you're sick, flu, whatever it is, just stay home and take care of yourself. So that was a big overview, trying to say what our focuses are this year. We, of course, will continue with arming teachers with, we'll be putting flip charts in all of our classrooms. This is a draft. Pushing that out to our teachers, continuing with our mechanisms. Remember, we had that conversation years ago, last year, I believe, when we talked about hardening and softening and providing those preventative measures for access, like the doors, the locks, the cameras. This is focused on really partnerships with our first responders, response times, and communication with our families, and for our teachers to have communication with us as well. I wanted to save a little time too for any questions you might have.
Thanks. I have a question. What is like the overall plan? What does this fall under?
What does mean the plan itself?
Yeah, like a crisis response plan. Do we have something in place?
Yes, we do. We have crisis response plans for everything from a gas leak to a mass casualty. This is in conjunction with training we've had from the SROs, the Oregon School Resource Officers Association, the National FBI, CIA, when they talk about the best ways to communicate during incident response. When we have if there were an emergency at the school and police and fire descend upon us, our role then is to make sure that we have the plan in place for us to take care of our students and our staff, and actually the handling of it from an incident command team, from the fire department to insurgent, for the actually going in with the police department. They handle that part of the team. So it's in conjunction with advice from first responders and how they want us to best prepare for our response.
What about the diseases portion? Is that separate, some other plans?
That's separate. We have an exposure control plan that's on the internet, and it has a communicable disease portion of it. And so that was just more of an update because COVID is still on people's minds. And so letting you know what the district is doing moving forward, because state and federal guidance has shifted, right? So letting people who still want access to PPE, we're still doing the cleaning, and that's their right to want those, and we will continue to support them. For people who do not want to wear masks, that's their right as well, but we're still going to continue to clean and do some of that. It would help, it helps us lessen even during flu season and cold season. They're just good cleaning practices to do.
Yeah, one thing that I would suggest, I know some neighboring districts are doing increased ventilation, filtration. I'm not sure if we've done some of that, could do more.
No. Yeah, I mean, we've had indoor air quality reports. We've turned our indoor air to the highest flow rate it can. We've increased to MERV 13, and so we are looking into that, and actually had an independent audit who can help us best set up those systems. But yes,
Good to hear.
So you provided bullet points and, as you mentioned, very general view of the plan, but is there a timeline for some of these items? I mean, for families to have access to the steps of, the process of,
for which one?
all?
So like the communication. So the web page design piece I put on there as a tool. So I think the web page design piece is, I'm looking at Rachel when we rolling that one out.
Fall.
And in the fall, right now we're setting up meetings with WPD, WFD to review the reporting mechanisms to make sure that everything talks on their system. So I would probably say that would be winter, more than likely, because it also has to go through procurement process because it costs money. So we have to go through that. As far as the on-site trainings and access, those are ongoing. We'll continue to do those throughout the year.
So if our staff is not trained, when does?
No, for the trauma kits, those will be starting as soon as the trauma kits. We haven't received them yet, so as we deploy them out in there, we'll offer the training with them because we want them to physically have these things as we're going through it with them.
You mentioned the electronic doors. Can we say 100% confidence that every single door at all the buildings within the Woodburn School District are locked electronic?
Exterior doors,
Exterior doors?
not all of them, that what they put them on the entrance and the exits. So like if you look at the high school, the backside of the gym, those are locked doors that remain locked. So the doors that they're using for entrance and exits are where we're putting the electronic badging systems.
Is there a plan to get those doors that aren't?
I'd have to look into that from a cost perspective too. Yes. So I'd have to look into a little bit more.
So kind of adding to that, and some of these items actually cost. So I know some of these have been fulfilled, but for those that have not, what is the funding looking like?
It would have to come out of our general fund.
Do we have an idea of the cost of?
Yeah, I think that you're probably looking roughly around 60,000 a year for the communication increases.
And did you have funding?
Yeah, we'll have to prioritize funding. I mean, that's part of the budgeting process is to prioritize certain things over others. You know,
Right.
and so when we're talking about, you're talking about 60,000, that's about licensing for certain kinds of softwares and whatever. You know, there are other hardware pieces. You asked about the door hardware. In some places, we just remove the door handles altogether, the ones you can't use don't want to be using physical keys, right? So we only want to use badging to get in. There are some practical limitations to that as well. So there are licenses for certain software that do run these doors, right? So when you connect the doors to your PA systems, to your badging system, to your Active Directory, for instance, so we know that you're active employee, whatever that looks like. But you have to, prior to that budget, when you're looking at the overall budget, it's part of our operational, thing. So we were able to do some of these things out of other funds in the past, like doing a radio system. I don't know what the budget was because that was before my time, many, many weeks ago. But if you look at the other kinds of things, there's some of these things. So when you're looking at like there's a flip chart on the table there next to Casey's left elbow. These are a relatively small cost for a very high level of convenience because it's the simple, here's the quick procedure for a teacher to grab the flip chart and here's what's happening. And I'll just use gas leak because that's a common thing that can happen in buildings. So you grab the flip chart, what do? I take attendance, I take my things, so it's because people in a crisis will sometimes forget those things. So some of these things are not high cost. Other ones, they do have licensing, but we also pay license on our video cameras, we pay a license on our switches that run in the closet. So all of those things have a certain kind of cost. So when we install those things, that's when we budget for them in the long term. Do we have enough to budget in? What are we phasing out? What priorities do we shift to? So yeah, so these are all things that we know we can afford. A lot of this, honestly, is about bringing some of the disparate things that have been out there and getting them all going in a certain direction, trying to put these things together, bringing our police back into the buildings to train, right? Because it meant we didn't know what the buildings look like on the inside. When you go into a foreign building, it's nice to know what you're doing. So bringing them in to do their training there is important. And then also, this communications piece about having radio systems that they can connect to, so they can listen in when they need to. And deploying a significant amount of digital radios out there is no small task. But again, each one of those things are things that we have to prioritize. We do have to do some work on our doors. We've got to look at our badging. The card lock system, some of them are aging, so we're going to have to replace those because at some point after sitting out in the sun and the cold, year after year, they begin to break down, so we have to replace those. But when you mindfully budget for things, you say there's a replacement schedule on these. They're going to last 2 or 3 or 5 years or whatever that is, and you just say this many we have to replace over time. So yeah, those things are all well within the operating budget of taking care of safety and security. The big ones are when you redo the whole facade of your school because you're going to build a vestibule like you've done through the bond. And that's why some of those things have to wait for the bond because you're doing a significant level of reconstruction.
Is there anything that we need to wait for?
Not in this stuff here, no. No, we have all these are all very well covered.
The last thing I wanted to point out here was the reunification plan that we're working with the WPD and with the fire department. I don't know what that reunification plan looks like, but ensuring that is as strong as possible.
Yeah, and met with Woodburn Fire, what was it, 2 weeks ago, and it's really important to have both of them on the same page. So as the reunification, knowing with the police, we have to figure out what the traffic patterns are around the buildings, where we're going to take our kids, the impact it's going to have on that geographic location. If we move our kids from A to B, is that an area that the police can secure as far as traffic patterns? Because we can't just shut down these. And then with police or with fires, where they're going to set up their instant command posts, we want to make sure we steer clear. So working with them right now to revisit all those, and because it's been 2 years of COVID, which has been a little bit different, revisit those and digitize them so that they're easily accessible. And that's another part of it, is really making these things accessible at a moment's notice for our first responders and for our administrators at buildings, which would then increase the communication to our parents because those decisions and what we can push out can happen that much faster.
Yeah, we normally revisit those because reunification, people want to have their kids back, right? That's really an important thing. And so making sure that the reunification plans are set, and I know that both of our police and fire have some plans about where they would send us, but it depends on what happens. So if you have a fire, as the high school had a fire a few years ago, which way do the kids walk? Where do they go? How can we get buses in to get them home, or how do we get them to the location? And so those are revisited every couple of years. And it's just a normal part of the practice. Like, okay, is this where we still want to go? Is that building still available to us? If it's such beautiful weather in Oregon, so many months of the year when we're in school, we have to have a place that's covered that would provide some shelter until we could, organize the system to get parents reunified with their children or their families confidence in their children. So all of those things just get revisited often, and but doing it with both groups of the first responders and the district together is just something that makes our plan more solid. So we're all on the same page rather than them telling us, and now we're surprised. Everybody kind of knows this is the church you're going to go to, or the warehouse you're going to go to, or the other school you're going to walk to. Because often we'll be walking from one place to another one, unless we can get transportation there. But as you all know, places like Highway 214, very challenging, right? And that's not a local street, that's a state highway. So we have some other challenges that we have to continue to work on in practice.
And my other question is around COVID. So where does, so I know parents can't go into schools yet. So where does that fall into?
So parents can't go into school?
Right.
Well, I mean, visitors, like if you're stopping, yes, and you have volunteer status, and they just say they have to go through their building admin, go through the volunteer process, they can go. So if people want to volunteer in their schools, they go through the volunteer process. Now there's legislation in place that we don't control around trainings, around all those pieces that is required that they do, but they can go through a volunteer status at their site and go to their school.
So what about a parent, for example, dropping off their kindergartner on the first day of school to their classroom?
We had that conversation, and we said if a parent wants to drop their kid off, walk into class, give them a hug, wish them good, then just help them access that building and make sure you have supervision in place and let that happen.
But how would parents know that that's available?
The communication through their principal, and we'll work with them on that.
And I asked because I was in my neighborhood and a parent whose kiddo is now going to be in first grade, has never been in school, let alone the classroom. And that came up, and that's why I'm asking. So our parents don't know that that's even an option. I don't know it's an option. And so I know that other school districts near and far have opened up their schools very similar to what it was prior to COVID. So I'm just curious as to,
What do you mean opening up for people to walk in and
like-
out all the time?
like
Or
parents coming in,
are you talking about the first day of school?
not just the first day of school.
Okay, because I
So I guess I just don't know enough, and
Yeah.
maybe our families don't know enough as to why they wonder why they can't go into the
Sure.
office.
they can't go to the office or into their class.
I mean, I've had parents say, they meet me outside of school. I can't go into the office. And so I'm not quite sure how to respond. I listen, and so it just seems like it's confusing for families. And they want to be a part, but they don't know how.
Okay.
And so what is it? look
So
like?
let me see if I can simplify a little bit. So there are multiple things that you had in that statement. So first, the first day of school, we get that people want to drop their kid off. It does require us to do additional supervision. So when we talk about it, I'll talk about it from a blank safety standpoint. We are now letting in unknown adults. Yes, I understand that they're families and their parents, but we're letting people into the building, which requires that then we go through additional supervision, which is fine. First day of school. For kindergarten especially, it's also nice for the kindergarten kid to go in and then everybody go have some coffee in the library. As far as coming into the office to meet their kids, well, part of this, and I believe that was how all of the stuff we did for around COVID was, right? So we're trying to keep as many people out, so you have not as many transmission options or opportunities happening in the office. So this year, if they want to, they can come in and they can meet meet their children, that's fine, but we're not going to have people wandering the hallways. Because again, that's a safety risk for us. And we have to that's why we put in these safety vestibules. This is why we have these kind of things. Because it's for the safety of everybody else's children as well. So if they want
Right,
to
I
meet
guess-
their child, that's fine, they can meet them in the office. But just wandering the halls to go out and see the classroom on a daily basis, that's not going to be good.
Right, which makes sense.
Okay.
Clearly, what I'm referring to is I go and I want to take my kiddo to her classroom, or I want to go visit her for lunch, and other parents have access. So
Yeah,
that's-
we don't do that.
Okay, so then I think that needs to be communicated because as to why.
Okay.
One, and for our parents to, I mean, yeah, so I mean, that might be, that's new to me. And so with, some of these things about COVID and optional for certain things, but yet parents are not allowed to go visit their kid for lunch or things like that.
Right, the visiting the kids for lunch is not under COVID though. That's a general safety thing.
I visited my kid over lunch.
Right. We have to tighten up our security because it's just one of those things. It's,
Okay, then if that's the case, I think also it should be communicated.
okay. We
And I
can,
don't know that our parents know that. And I'm just curious when this kind of started.
well, it had to start at least during COVID, so we haven't had any visitors in the building at all.
Right, but
Right,
prior to
so- So 2 years prior to that, it's been almost 3 years, right?
COVID. Right, but I'm not referring to COVID because obviously that,
Right, I don't know what you
That
did
is
prior
right.
to COVID.
but prior to COVID, families were allowed to come and enjoy their
Okay.
kids as they checked in. And they visited during lunchtime,
Every day of the week.
whenever they wanted to.
There would be one too.
Okay.
There was a visitors table as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else for Casey while he's here?
Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. Okay, next up, we're going to have our English language learner report. And that would be Chrissy Chapman, our Director of Teaching and Learning, join us. And the entire report is actually in your packet. For some light reading. So, take it away.
Yeah, good evening, Chair Vela Moreno, Superintendent Morlock, and members of the school board. So as Dr. Morlock said, I included in your board report, you have a memo that has a link to the 2020-21 Oregon English Language Learner Report. This report does come out a year after it's reflecting, so it's reflecting the 2020-21 school year. And this is published by the Oregon Department of Education annually, and a part of the requirement is to make sure that we share it with school boards and have it available on the district website and in the school or in the district office. And so if you have any questions about it, I can answer that, but otherwise you should have access to all of it in your reports.
Additional
What stood out to
ideas?
you?
Oh, sorry.
What stood out to you in writing this report, putting it together? Any data points or there?
The report itself is reflective of the entire state of Oregon and the English learners, students who qualify for English learner services across the state. And so, you know, it's a pretty comprehensive report for the entire state. There is a tool where you can compare your district to other districts, and it looks at like your demographic data and your state assessment data, ninth grade on track. So it's a pretty comprehensive report. I think from the state report, one of the things that stood out to me was they give some information on long-term English learners, which are students who are in the programs for more than 7 years, who receive English learner services for more than 7 years. And of those students, 37% of our current English learners with disabilities are identified as long-term English learners. So that's for the entire state, not for Woodburn. And so I think that that's a demographic that needs, you know, a lot of support across our state of students who qualify for English learner services and special education.
In looking at this, any thoughts around, like how we can strengthen the program or how we can better serve our students?
Yeah, one of the areas in here is you know, the types of programs that students access. And so being a dual language district, there is a lot of research, you know, that indicates that that is one of the most supportive models for students who do qualify for English learner services to not only learn English, but also, you know, become bilingual or multilingual. And so I think continuing to strengthen our, you know, the addition of a preschool program into our district, both for the Russian and the Spanish programs, is giving our students an additional year of dual language opportunities. And so I think continuing to focus on really strengthening our dual language program. We have a new language arts materials this year, you know, that we presented on last year. And so we'll be spending a lot of time doing professional development around that. And we're also always focusing on ways to continue to improve instruction, so our students have access to really rigorous instruction and high quality materials in our schools. So I think those are a few of the ways, but dual language is still the leading way to support students who qualify for English learner services. So I'm really proud that we're a, you know, district that offers that opportunity from preschool on.
In our schools, are there specific schools that have a higher percentage of English language learners, and is it equally distributed? How do we target resources for somebody?
Yeah, I would have to look to see, you know, exactly kind of how our demographics are falling right now. Woodburn does have the highest percentage of English learners in the state. When you look at the percentage, not the highest number, Salem Kaiser has the highest number, but we do have the highest percentage. So we do have students across all of our schools, which is different than a lot of districts. A lot of districts have them, you know, students concentrated in specific schools, but I think that's one advantage that we have, is that our students are spread across all of our schools. And so we're able to provide supports district-wide. And so it's not like we're trying to do something different at one school versus another. We also have a very high percentage of students who have exited from English learner services. And so even though students have exited, they continue, you know, you're always continuing to learn language. And so, so there are things that we do just district-wide to really focus on language instruction, whether it's, you know, English, Spanish, or Russian, and always trying to incorporate a lot of language support and scaffolding within our instruction across the district.
How's that looking at the high school level now with the single high school? That when I was a student, ACE was probably the where a lot of the English language learners went. How's that look like now? It's one big high school.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for the entire staff to come together to really support our emergent bilinguals, because, you know, like you said, it kind of, I think just by chance happened that a lot of our English learners did end up at ACE. And so now it's the entire high school that's really coming together to support students that are emergent bilinguals. And so there are some teachers who have had more professional development around best practices for teaching students who are emergent bilinguals. And so this is really an opportunity to provide that professional development across the entire building. And in the past, it was also challenging for all students to access the dual language programs, because there was, you know, some courses offered at different schools. And so now that program will be available to all students. And so it'll really reduce the amount of barriers that were created because of the small schools with regards to access to all of our programs.
So when you say access to all programs, so I know when students like an ELL class, and that's like taking place of any Latin course. So if the student has to continue those courses, how do they have access to these programs?
So the state this past year came out with options to have classes that are integrated, where you can teach like the ELPs, English Language Proficiency Standards, within other courses, so that students don't have to take just an ESOL class. They can take a language arts class that is really providing a lot of language support, so that it does free up an extra period for students. So there is that option now. There's also that same House bill that went through also provides the opportunity to give world language credit for ESOL classes. So it's no longer just an elective credit. You can actually get world language credit for those courses now. And so the state is really trying to honor students for like language proficiency and to provide different opportunities so that it's not just an elective class that they have to take all the way through. And ideally, unless the student moves here later on, ideally students are exiting, by the end of elementary school, beginning of middle school. If it's going beyond that, then we really need to, figure out what other types of support can we offer our students and what are the barriers, or, why aren't they achieving that level of proficiency to be able to exit out of the program.
And do we know what that percentage looks like for those who don't make it or don't exit the program in fifth grade? What that might look like in middle school and high school?
Let's see, we do have on the report, the grade level where we have the highest percentage of students exiting is sixth grade. And by exiting, they have to pass the state English language proficiency assessment. So sixth grade is the grade where we have the most students, the highest percentage exiting. Let me see, if it gives us the number of students who are, I don't know that it broke down the long-term English learners by district. It doesn't look like it. But as far as like the percentage of students exiting, let's see here, we have the highest number at the highest percentage at sixth grade, and then after that it's fourth grade. And so, and then seventh grade. So just kind of based on when our students are exiting, we do have the highest percentages, exiting before they get to high school. So kind of upper elementary and then sixth and seventh grade at the highest percentages.
What's our plan to do? I mean, you mentioned earlier, like the scaffolding approach for students who are need proficiency and allow them to take an additional elective. What's the district's plan to roll that out into the next school year? I'm really excited about it because it gives students opportunity to still focus on gaining proficiency in a language without taking away elective credit or other classes they might need to graduate. So what's our plan to roll that out?
Yeah, we've been doing it at one of our middle schools, and this year we're doing it at both middle schools and the high school, that model. And so we've got, we had instructional supports lined up for those teachers to work with them to make sure that they are, really understanding how to incorporate both sets of standards and how to really scaffold instruction and the language demands that their students, need to be able to meet. And so we're providing a lot of professional development for them this year and support within their classrooms to support those teachers. There are two to three teachers at each school that are doing this, so they'll be able to work together and collaborate and do some planning together. And so this is the kind of, the first year that we're really going across the entire secondary level, because it is something that that now we have more flexibility based on the new laws that have come out. So yeah, we're going to get feedback from students this year to find out, how this new model is either supporting them or, I hope that it supports all students, but we'll get feedback from students to see if this, model is more supportive for them or if they struggled more with it. Kind of their feelings on having that extra period to decide what they take as an elective instead of having to take ESOL. But then we will always have ESOL courses for students that might be the best model for them. So it's not, we're not doing the same thing for everyone. We'll have different options for students based on their preference or, kind of what's working best for them.
And are we doing that just for ESOL students in language? Or are we doing it with any other subject matters? The example that comes to my mind is math. We see a lot in higher ed scaffolding around math curriculum. Is that something we're also able to do?
We're not doing ESOL like integrating it with math, but there is, like, for example, tomorrow the teachers are getting professional development at the middle school level just on how to incorporate more language into their instruction regardless of their content area. Because there is, academic language involved in every content area that's new for all students. And so even if you're, even if you're a monolingual English student, you still don't know the language of science or the language of math. And so, so they've engaged in different trainings throughout the years, and tomorrow they're going to be doing another one, and they'll be coming together with their content grade level teams and really looking at the language standards and figuring out where they fit into their instruction and how they can support students more with scaffolding the language demands of their content area, both for students who it's, maybe their second or third language, or students who it's their first language. So. Yeah.
And that world language that you mentioned, that, do they have to test out of that? Do they have to test to take that world language course?
No, so if the student takes ESOL as a course, they can receive world language credit for that course, because for them, it is a second language if you're taking an ESOL class. And so, so now instead of, in the past, we could only give an elective credit for that course, but now it can fulfill one of their applied or fine arts credits for high school graduation as a world language credit.
And that would be 1 credit, 2 credits.
If they take it for a full year, it's one credit.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. Next up. Mayor Bishop. Going through our business report.
Yeah.
Financial report.
Good evening, everyone. So you have in your board packet, your financial report. And this is for last fiscal year ended June 30th. To be quite honest with you, in August, we don't have a whole heck of a lot to report on for the current fiscal year. Things are still ramping up. We haven't had our first official large payroll. CMA teachers don't get paid their first paycheck until September. So there's not a whole much exciting going on quite yet in the new fiscal year. As you can see, this is unaudited. Our audit typically doesn't occur until October, and we get those final numbers generally in December. So you'll see unaudited on there. Not much has changed from the last time you saw these numbers. They're still subject to change based upon outcomes of the audit, but we ended the year in a good financial spot. You guys also have the ESSER report in there. We're moving through spending our ESSER dollars. Of course, summer school was really large this summer. We're working on finalizing that now. So you'll be able to see that in next month's report, the impact on the ESSER fund. We did get the summer school grants from the state again this year. So that was really helpful. We were able to provide a pretty robust summer program.
So again, these ESSER funds are like temporary funds, right?
Correct, yeah.
And so I noticed like nurse services, so those would be temporary.
Those nursing services, yes, because we increased the amount of nurses we had in the schools beyond levels we've ever had prior, due to the pandemic. So once these funds are gone, we'll go back to our regular levels of nursing.
Do you know what?
Oh, I do not know that off the top of my head, no.
And then that would be the same for the preschool program.
The preschool? Correct. So the preschool is a little different in that most of the preschool program is not funded out of ESSER funds. What you're seeing in there would be things on top of that we did. So extra things we needed to purchase during COVID to make our preschool safer if we made to follow COVID protocols. Most of our preschool is funded out of Preschool Promise.
or Title 1C, which is our migrant fund. And that's funded through a separate special revenue account. We also have our teen parent program, which is funded out of the general fund.
Custody and care of children services, is that the DLC?
No, that was actually what we have done for the summer enrichment type programs. So childcare before and after the summer school programs.
And so that won't be available.
Not to that extent, no. We'll still do, of course, our after school club type programs, but
When you say before and after, what are we looking at?
so that was typically during summer school. So we have some families that needed access to childcare starting at like 5 a.m. until the school day started. And then, so that was funded out of that piece. And then after the school day, the last summer, the childcare grant specifically from the state only went, I believe it was until 5 p.m. and we had some children that needed to be picked up after that. So we had to fund that out of a different area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Next up on the agenda, confirmation items. Item number 1, meeting minutes from August 9th, 2022 draft meeting minutes. The minutes of the previous meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections to them? Okay, if there are no further corrections, the minutes are approved as distributed. Next item is personnel.
Point of order. Just confirmation items, confirmation items, we can legislate, or we can go one by one.
Yeah, we can do them all as one group, so they're,
Okay, let's do it.
yeah, and then you can just ask for a motion for that. If somebody wants to pull one out, then they can pull one out and say, so that will help in the case of meeting minutes. They can say, I actually want to pull this one out and if I review this one separately, but this, the confirmation items can go all as one,
Always.
as one piece, yeah. as one-
All right.
as one function.
Let's go ahead and do that. So you just make the motion to confirm the meeting minutes, personnel, acceptance of gifts, surplus property, and disposal report.
I move to approve the confirmation items as presented.
Seconded.
All-
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is passed. On to board action items. Old business, there is none. New business, resolution number 22009, approval of the lease of electronic reader boards.
Our director of business is back, Sarah Bishop.
So the resolution you have in front of you is to approve the lease of reader boards at all of the schools who presently do not have them, which is all of the schools but the high school. After 5 years, the reader boards become ours. This is just capital financing essentially. for them.
You say that again. So we're leasing them, but after 5 years, they're ours.
They are ours, correct?
For this amount, 200,000, is that one time or is that every?
Every year.
Oh, for 5 years.
Yeah.
And they're ours.
Yeah.
Okay. And for those 5 years, did they do maintenance?
Yes, everything's inclusive.
And what's the life of the reader boards?
Oh, gosh, 10 to 20 years usually. I've probably been milking the one along with high school longer than that.
So when will these be up?
We still have to go through the city, we started the ball rolling on that to get through their, the approvals as to where they can go, where we can place them. So once that is complete, if you guys recall the bond project, sometimes that can be a little slow moving. But hopefully, that's what we say before the end of the school year.
There's a digital electronic piece, so the supply right now is a little bit finicky. Our goal.
Right, I move resolution number 22009, approval of the release of electronic reader boards. Any second, for discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion has passed.
Exactly.
Item number 2, acceptance of board resignation and declaration of board vacancy.
All right, so for this item, a couple of things. So first, the resignation during our last meeting creates a vacancy. Vacancies are not required to be filled, and that's the board's option to decide to fill a vacancy. In the case that you did not fill the vacancy, you still have to have a majority vote of the number of seats on the board. So, for instance, you still have to have, if you only had 3 people here, you'd have to have all 3 in the positive to pass something that came along. So I just want to be clear about that. So vacancies, something that you don't, you can declare or you don't have to declare, but I wanted to just be clear about that piece to begin with. The second one is, and one of the most important things for us is to know what, if you look at number 3, if you're, first of all, if you're going to move ahead with declaring a vacancy, the time frame, so how much time you'd like to establish for the announcement and the window for application, let's say, to apply for the board. So how long you want that process to be open for, to allow enough people to hear about it, enough people to apply, and then go through the other process. So you then interview folks, and I think you just did this recently, so you know that. So a big part of it for us on the district side is to know how long you want to leave the application window open. First, if you're going to declare a vacancy, and then if you are going to declare a vacancy, then how long you'd like to have that window open for.
I move that we accept the board resignation and declare a board vacancy. Any discussion? We'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. The motion is passed.
I keep pressing mute. Mm, I keep muting myself.
Did you vote yes? Aye.
Yes, I said aye.
So, next item, now that the vacancy has been declared, we need to establish a timeline for applications.
Mhm.
From 6 or 8 weeks. I don't remember if it was 6 weeks.
I mean, it would be ideal to have somebody for our retreat coming in the next few days.
We will have.
Next week's the first week of school. We got that as right after Labor Day. We got a couple of challenging weeks. So if you did it 6-week time, you could have it for your meeting on October 11th. You have the board work session. That could be different. Or you can move it to the October 25.
And it can be done either the work
Yeah,
session.
we could do it either one. Yeah, we can certainly set that agenda that way. Depending on how much you want. Like, 1, 2, 3, 7. Yeah, so the 7th, the end of the 6th week, we'll put that on the 11th of October. Or if you wanted to go to an 8-week thing, that would put on the October 25th. Remembering a couple of busy weeks at the beginning, but
Then C would be held through June 23rd.
so if you want to set it for October 25. For the time for you to deliberate and interview potential employees and make those things.
I'll move that our board vacancy timeline for the application is set for our meeting on October 25th. Second,
Second.
any further discussion?
So I just have a question around what would be on those agendas for those meetings. Is there one meeting that's a bit wider? I wonder if that would be helpful.
Or, yeah, or even like a special meeting. We've done special meetings before.
Can you repeat Noemi's question? I couldn't hear.
Yeah, sorry. Noemi was asking if there is one meeting that is heavier than the other ones. We don't have those reports set yet. I'm just looking at the board report calendar, so we don't have all of those in yet. We do have heavier ones in September so far. So we have several reports that are coming in, tag report, counseling framework, language program coordinators, other things. So those things are all coming in. We don't have all of those set yet, so we could adjust them either direction.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that was answering her and answering you. So yeah, I think it's fine. We do this one.
All right, we'll move on to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion has passed. Okay, we will now move on to executive session. Item, future agenda items.
As I mentioned before, we will have, and I believe it's on the 13th, language program coordinator report from Sonia. On the 28th, we'll have a report from Chrissy from teaching and learning about TAG, and then the counseling framework from Dana in the Department of Student Services. So those are upcoming for the month of September so far.
Chrissy or Sarah mentioned summer school.
It would have been Chrissy who mentioned summer school, but also Sonia's a huge part of that as well. I will see if you can have a summer school, you want a summer school report.
Yes, in terms of students served.
Yeah.
And some items that are listed in this, as I looked at. So I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I didn't have a chance to look at all of it, but I did notice. Just like the hiring and resignation of staff and supervisors and classified. I know that these are definitely hard times, probably for all schools across the state, and so I'm just wondering what that continued plan for us looks like as far as recruiting staff that represents our students. I mean, I think I counted 4 female admin left our district this year. And so just kind of like that why, and I know, they have reasons for leaving, and we may not always know why, but, what do we do to retain like staff who is doing a good job, or they leave because, they need a better opportunity. And like, why aren't we providing that better opportunity here? And the other item is just information around college and career with the small academies and merging to one. The college and career can always serve all of those small schools. Just kind of looking at, what is that going to look like moving forward? What is the model? What does data look like?
You talk about the college career services at the high school.
Right. And then also, how does that trickle down to middle school and elementary? Because clearly we know that research indicates that kiddos like in 5th grade know that they're going to go to college or not. And so if we're waiting for junior or their senior year to talk to them about college, we're a bit late when it comes to that. So
Yeah, we can talk about what's called the plan and profile. And those are big on those in 7th grade. We can talk a little bit about that process as well. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to be moving to using Naviance, which we've already had, but we'll be using that full time. And moving that down to 7th grade in the coming year.
Really interested in that, and then also, like, for example, yesterday in Ghana this weekend, the Northwest Carpenters Union were there, and so when we have conversations about college and career, how are we also setting our students up for the trades, whether it's apprenticeships or electricians, etc. I know we're working really closely with Atlantic Career Academy. I'm not sure what we can do to step that leads to licensure or getting our students ready for college, career, trade, right?
Yeah, we
It
can
doesn't definitely have to be in September as well.
right, but we can give a little more as we because WCA things will begin early September, and so we talk about more about what they're doing, what they're opening, and then some additional plans around career opportunity locally. WCA is a great way to supplement that, but I think we have some other things that they do here. Actually, it was great to see them. They had a fairly busy booth at the Fiesta.
Yeah, that's a good challenge. Hammer.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have something else on the other side.
Mhm.
There it is, sorry.
I was gonna bring up the Russian program coordinator. So make sure that we-
We'll actually talk about that in the language program coordinator report from Sonia.
Okay,
that'll
so
be part of
that's coming.
Mhm.
Okay.
That'll be in our next meeting, I think on the 13th.
Good.
And then my other item is, that I'd like to raise is just that it seems like I kind of listened and couldn't quite listen at the last meeting via Zoom. But in looking at our public comment, just the concern that the community has from last meeting, and also the community who's shared today. And so I'm just curious around where we are with that. What is the policy around that?
The policy for,
What are, oh, I can't see you all, but
actually, yeah, that would be, right, yes.
Thank you.
Actually, there's a chain on the side, it'll. Ah, there we go.
yeah, so I mean, last
Thank you.
session, last meeting for public comment, we had 6 individuals share about the same item. And then today we have an individual share about similar item. And so my question is, you know, are we gonna address this as a board? Is this gonna continue to keep coming up? Is it gonna get in the way of moving forward? So I don't know if we're having conversation around this, or are we just kind of weathering the storm?
So I'm not exactly sure what you're asking in terms of advice goes. So the public comments are, board meetings have public comment available as a courtesy to the public to speak.
Right.
In terms of action, there are very few actions as a board that you can actually take. As all of you, each of you is an elected official. If the public wishes to take action, one of the only action they have is to mount and do a recall effort, do a recall vote. There is nothing that the board itself can do to remove members. So that's not within your ability to do that. Now, each of you is a publicly elected official. And so you don't have power one over the other in that way. So other than that, if you want to talk about what censure looks like, we can talk about that, but that doesn't do anything in terms of what people get to vote on or not vote on. That won't change it either. So really, the only recourse for the public is to have a recall election. Other than that, there is no other recourse. Public comment, if it gets to be a lot, then you can change the number of minutes. You can go to a lottery system. I think we should probably talk about public comment in general, so you have some structure around those things. But other than that, those, again, that's a courtesy. So you can do it sometimes, you can do it other times, you can do them all in one. There are lots of ways to structure that, but the business of the district, as a reminder for folks, that this is the board's meeting held in public, right? Which is different than a public meeting, or two different things. And so we have a business item agenda. One of those items is to allow public comment. You do that, and you go into the business. So as far as stopping us from doing our business, it won't stop us from opening the doors and having kids come in and doing this teaching and learning.
So you don't think it'll get in the way?
No.
Do you have anything else? Anything? No comment. So then, for those who are here, they've heard. I will just go on as if.
Well, my job is to operate the school district, right? So you hired me to make sure that our kids are safe, our kids are fed, our kids are getting on the bus, our kids are getting home, our kids are getting taught. Right, and so that's my job. You're in charge of me, telling me you're directing me to make sure that kids do all those things and our teachers do those things. So that's my role. I can give advice and I can tell you what you can and can't do in terms of the law and in terms of your own policy, because the policy is yours. And if you wish to change policy, you can do those things. But I'm also telling you what the limitations are from the public side of things about what can and can't be done. There will always be news stories of some kind or another. And I'm not saying that they are things that are fun for me to listen to or read to, but my focus is specifically on making sure we have staff in the buildings, making sure we have kids that are getting in and being safe and learning to read and write honestly. And so if that's something else that you wish to discuss with the board, that's fine, but you've hired me to make sure that we have schools that are operating and that we're doing the business of the kids. So that's really 100% of the focus. We've been filling vacancies. We have in-service tomorrow starting at 7:30 in the morning. We'll have all of our folks together for the first time. We're going to have some breakfast. Give a little talk. We're gonna do an activity together, 750 people in one, not one space, but in 3 or 4 big spaces. We're gonna do some activities together, some team building and some opportunities for Woodburn School District to feel like a big team again and back in it. So that's been my focus. And that's, again, that's what you hired me to do, is to make sure our schools can operate. And so the rest of noise in the world is just noise.
And so then when we ask board members break policy, what does that mean?
What do you mean break
I mean,
policy?
like, if we look at the policy, clearly there's been a breach, or we've done something that we're not supposed to, and it's listed on there. What is that?
Well, there's a difference between, so policy as a, for instance, here's an example. There are some folks who wish to bring their high school students to the district. And one of the actions of the board was to say, we'll accept students K through 8, but we're not taking in additional students to high school at this time. So I have to, on each one of those, no matter what the story is of the family, I have to deny them access. Now, they can appeal that decision to the board, but it's the board's policy. It's my job to follow the policy.
Right.
Now, the board can change the policy, the board can overturn the policy, the board cannot follow the policy. The policy can be simply that guideline. But those policies are set up for you to be able to follow some kind of a guideline. Sometimes they're based in law, many times they have laws in them, and other times they're just based on the opinion of the board. So again, you're able to not follow your policy, you're able to overturn your policy or to change your policy because they are the board's policies. I am not able to do those things. So I have to follow a policy, whatever that policy is. I don't know if that helps answer that or not.
So we ask our community members to follow policy, but yet when it comes to us, we can not follow it because it's just, they can be served as a guide.
Well, it is the board's policy. And so I'm sure that you have some specifics in mind around which policies have been violated, but I don't have those at the tip of my fingertips right now about which policies are violated in this and what I think we're talking about. So I think it's important that if you want to talk about those things, about those policies, then you can put them on the agenda to talk about where they fit, or we could talk about it at the retreat as well.
So talking about policy in retreat and specific policies that maybe haven't broken or violated.
Could be a place to do that. We've not set the agenda yet. I know we have some things that are on that agenda to talk about at the retreat.
Then I would suggest that one, to also add just like the different barriers to public comment and how those who make it through public comments are the ones who have navigated one, the website, and then figured out how to read public comments and how to figure out what to do and how to submit it. And so really those who make it to public comment, like really deserve some sort of trophy because I placed myself in that position to try to figure it out and it's quite complicated. And so what I'm hearing now is like, we can't hold each other accountable. Is that what I'm hearing? Like as board members?
How do you mean hold them accountable? Do you mean hold them accountable to voting them on and off? So I've seen
Well,
some
not
comments that
necessarily
have come
voting
in.
on and off because
Okay,
I'm
because
pretty
I've
sure
heard
that
that.
there's policy around that.
With, okay, and that's why I guess I'm asking which policy or to which policy you're referring.
I guess the policy they're referring to is the one, I don't know at the top of my mind, but, you know, I had community members reach out to me about an incident that happened. I read the policy, I'm like, this appears like something's been violated. So my concern is around, if that's the case, and we're board members, and we are holding others like the public accountable to follow our policy, then shouldn't we do the same?
I guess I'm not entirely sure how to answer that question. I'm not sure which policy we're talking about. I'm sorry. We're having, just hang on. I don't know which policy we're talking about.
Okay, but it would be any
So,
policy,
Okay.
because you, sir, with all due respect, you
Are
are
we gonna-
hired, they are elected.
If we can, so in order to have this conversation, we can be listening, and I know it might be frustrating, we're trying to kind of get through this. I know it's hard.
It was really hard. Thanks, Lorraine.
And so I don't know the policy off the top of my head, but I can say that as I kind of reviewed it, I questioned, and I didn't have a chance to contact OSBA. I mean, I did, but I didn't hear back. And so I usually connect with them because I want to make sure that, you know, that as board members, that's what we're doing, that we're doing what we're asking our community members to do as well.
Well, and if you find that one, you can send it my way, can also help go through the OSBA channel and figure it out.
Okay, I
That would be
will send
helpful.
that to you. And then,
And then we can discuss
Hear
it.
back.
Yep, we can discuss the retreat or the next meeting.
okay. So it sounds like we can discuss it at the retreat.
So we'll add that to the agenda for the retreat. Any further comments from anybody? Laura?
I thought we had a list of items that we wanted to touch base on the retreat, but I don't have it in front of me.
Sorry, we'll find it and send it out to the board, so you've got those, and I'll add this one on there, but I'll wait till knowing has the policy she'd like to add to it. We have a list of a few items, I'll send them out.
No further discussion on that topic.
This is a reminder, it is on a Saturday, Saturday the 10th. The board retreat.
9 to 2.
Mhm.
Do we have location? Is that here?
I believe it'll be here. Yeah. There might even be food.
Is that one open to the public or it's just?
All meetings of the board are open to the public.
Is this the meeting where Vince or somebody from OSBA?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so next item, board calendar. We have the board retreat coming up Saturday, September 10th, from 9 to 2. And then we have a work session coming up on Tuesday, September 13th. At the usual time, 5:45. Okay, since there's no further business, the meeting is adjourned.